I don't really look at it as resisting. It was more of rechanneling my energy into something that's more meaningful to me. And then I realized na I was using shopping as a distraction from the things that I've always wanted to do. And so instead of resisting myself, I rechanneled that energy into something that gives me purpose.
During the pandemic also, did you fall into the trap of like online shopping? A lot of us, I feel like we did that so that it was some sense of normalcy. How was that for you, like with online shopping?
All of us, or majority of us during the pandemic, we were like questioning a lot of things that we're like, oh, so when we are forced to slow down, when we are forced to like be introspective and like reflect on where our life is going, we don't want to deal with it. Because we're like, that's too deep for me. Can I just, shop for something and make me feel good about the food I'm going to buy, or the sale that is giving me some excitement, some sense of reward? And that in itself, that's how it was for me. Like, shopping was like this distraction from the crisis that was going on in me internally. But then, of course, I say this now because I get it, but at that time I was in denial. So that's why, I've really been passionate about speaking up about it, because even just one person that comments in my videos and says that I feel so heard, I feel so seen, that like that's how I felt as well. And then we can normalize that maybe we are, doing some toxic habits that are just in form of a distraction from an internal conflict that we are really, really going through. And we're just in denial. It's really when we have to question ourselves, like, is this really something that is satisfying us? Or is it really just a false illusion that's giving us a false sense of control because we're just escaping from something that we're scared to confront? Well, we got deep real quick, but then like, that's how I see it.
No, it makes a lot of sense for sure. Kasi a lot of us, we try and avoid it. We try and avoid the part what you're really feeling. So you try and find different outlets, whether healthy or not, to ignore them. So in terms of like the online shopping though, how did you, I guess, resist? Was there a point though na parang you noticed na okay, I feel like I'm online shopping like every day. I should dial it back a little bit. What was the point when you realize that you have to start resisting the urge to do so?
Yeah. The thing about resisting or like the urge, I think for anyone who's like doing it, we kind of have this like at the back of our head telling ourselves that you shouldn't do that. Or like there's something that isn't right. But then you do it anyway. And I think like even for me, hindi lang naman siya nangyari nung pandemic eh. It's something that has been a yo-yo habit for me. Of course, I got all my needs met, right? When I was in high school, college. Pero I felt, again, my mindset was like, I felt deprived back then. Like, because I would compare my allowance to my friends. I would compare my friends who would be able to buy certain things, who would be able to, sobrang babaw. Pero yung nakakabili ng merienda, ako hindi, baon lang ako, hindi ako pwedeng bumili ng samahan ko ice cream. I mean, that's so random. But, like, those are the little things that I remember then I would diet so that I could save my allowance to buy makeup. Like, that's how, ganun yung diet ko noon. Diet ko was, para mag-shopping. Okay? So, and so it's really like, it's not even during the pandemic, it was way, way, way back. And then so, eventually when I started earning, I'm like, this is my time. I can finally buy all the luxury makeup. And, I shared this on my channel that it came to a point na for 1 month, I bought like 30,000 worth of like makeup. It was a joke na I blacked out. Pero when I think about it, I was spending blindly. So that already happened. And I knew that, okay, magtitipid na ako kasi dami ko ng ginastos, diba? So, and then I go into the cycle of like spending a lot. Then I have to deprive myself because I need to save the money I lost. And then after depriving myself, I felt like someone who's been dieting so much. Therefore, I want to eat the next buffet. Like that's my analogy. So para ko yo-yo. And so when I got into the pandemic, it was really heightened. Na parang, like I deserve to reward myself. I've been working so hard for the past, X years in my corporate job and all of that. And so that's why, going back to your question, na resisting, it was there. Kasi nga I was like yo-yoing, right? But then the question was, Like, what is going to make me spend sustainably? And so that's when I realized na it's not merely like, oh, I need to delete all the apps. You know, I need to delete all the shopping apps because kasalanan to ng mga shopping apps, which in fact hindi, right? It actually makes our life so much easier. And so when it comes to like resisting, parang I would rather look at it as, I don't really look at it as resisting. It was more of rechanneling my energy into something that's more meaningful to me. And then I
Mm.
realized na I was using shopping as a distraction from the things that I've always wanted to do, such as start my business, such as be consistent in my YouTube channel, such as share my message on TikTok no matter how cringe and embarrassing it was. And so that's where I poured like this energy to things that I'm passionate about. And so instead of resisting myself, I rechanneled that energy into something that gives me purpose. And so
Mm.
that's what ultimately stopped the cycle for good. And that's why I share my story today.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I like that you said that you rechanneled it because you're still spending, but then you're spending it for purposes, well, for your life's purpose, and also a purpose that that if you invest in it, it will still bring money back to you eventually. So it's really like I think that's a strategic way of actually thinking about like how to avoid like spending more than you should I guess on a regular basis. But it's really cool that you were able to share. I guess this is the story of you from being a shopaholic into something someone who's more, I guess, responsible in spending. Any other tips, I guess, for those who might have the same similar problems in terms of online shopping? If you, let's say, if you were to buy things online, what are some things to keep in mind? Should they have a list? Should they keep a budget? What are the things that they should do?
Yeah. The first question to ask is if you are in the cycle of like constantly online shopping and you feel like you can't resist temptation, you can't stop yourself, it's good to ask and check in with yourself like what are you distracting yourself from? You know, like because again, this shopping behavior, it's just a distraction from something that you don't want to confront. You
Hmm.
know, is it that you feel lost and empty in your career? That's why you're like, oh, might as well find reward in the things I buy? Or is it that you refuse to confront your feelings about something in the past? You know, may it be a broken heart, or may it be like someone who wronged you, and you're just like getting into shopping so that it could fill that void. Because I feel
Hmm.
like it's really important to get into the root cause of it. You know, I mean, of course, I did the temporary band-aid solution of like deleting the apps and like unfollowing the Instagram shops, but I keep searching for them pa rin, you know, because I
Mm.
haven't solved it from the root problem. And the root problem I had then was that I was using shopping as an unhealthy coping mechanism for the life crisis that I had then, that I refused to confront. Because I'm like, ever since kasi, parang I was a quote unquote overachiever, and I like carried it like a badge of honor. Like, oh, I always have to be strong. I always have
Right.
to be great at everything. I always have to stay longer hours because that's what it means to be successful and worthy of your income and all of that. And so when I started to question that, like, is that really the kind of success that I want? And is all these material things, is that trying to prove something that I actually don't want? You know? And so it's really important to get deep into that, because that's what I realized, that when I became honest with myself about like, Nick, like, you know this is wrong, but like what is it there that you're trying to not face? And it's
Hmm.
oftentimes it's like you need to face yourself right in the mirror and be honest to yourself, like what is this thing that you are not trying to look at in your face, you
Hmm.
know? And so that's number one. Because I feel like that's really for me like what changed everything, because ano parang takot ako na to admit that I have these weaknesses, na I can't feel bad about myself. I can't like have a crisis because you know you're like 25 years old. What crisis are you going through? You know, like there are other bigger problems in the world. Um, but I think if anything, like know that your feelings, what you're going through, is valid, and the more that you face them, the more it's gonna be easier to let go. And that's really something that, you know, like when I coach my clients, that's something that they get surprised by. They thought that I would just tell them how to do their Excel sheets, how to do their expense tracking, but we get deep into all of these things, all of their emotions, all of these negative things that they attach around money. Because that's only when we get into breaking the cycle. Once you find out what the root cause is and how you can solve it from there, may it be like forgiving yourself for the wrong things, for the decisions you've made in the past about money that you feel shame and guilt from, or may it be like forgiving your parents because they didn't teach you about money. They always fought around money. Like those are these things that we carry with us and translate into like the wrong money habits. And so once we
Mhm.
get into that, then we can get into, okay, how do we make sure that we get the right systems in place with your finances, with your budgeting, because that's only when your money habits really, really become sustainable.
Do you have another number? And do you have another tip? Because I feel like you said number one and number two. Give me
I
number two.
know. Yun nga eh. The number one is that, though, earlier. And then the second would be like, doon na tayo papasok sa financial systems. And when it comes to the financial systems, it's like really understanding what's the purpose of it. What's the purpose of having your finances intact in the first place? Because oftentimes we're just like, oh, it's for the future. It's for because I need to be responsible. And isn't that like a blanket statement that you can just find on
True.
Google, right? But what is the purpose behind all of it? Like, is it that, you want to go full time in that dream business you always wanted instead of settling for a career just to pay the bills? Or is it that you get to travel more often because you've always had that desire to have more adventures? Or is it that you get to finally get married because you feel like you can finally be financially prepared for it? Like all of these things have to be really clear. Like, what are these clear life goals that you are excited to fund, so that when there are potential sale, potential boodles, you're like, oh, that's just a distraction. That's just gonna delay the goals that I want. Why would I settle for that? I deserve so much more than that. I deserve to get married to the person I want to be with and be stable in that. I deserve to travel more because that's what I always wanted. I deserve to have fulfillment in my career and invest in skills and time and effort in making that happen. And so that's why I go back to like, what are the goals you want to rechannel your energy towards? Because I
Mhm.
believe that the desire can be so much stronger than just resisting. The desire can be so much larger than your life that you follow that. And then you realize that it becomes so much easier to say no to things that don't add value to that goal and say yes to the opportunities that do create an impact to those goals.
I love that. Like it's so profound actually. It's not as simple as just like, okay, how to save, this is what you should do. Like this is but there are those percentages na parang 40, 20, 20, whatever, like those percentages and like where you should put your money or how you should use your money. But this one really, if you really want to have a good handle on your finances, it's beyond the numbers. It's really psychological and like really identifying what it is, what kind of life it is and purpose and goals that you want to achieve, because most of them I think they're going to involve like financial investment also. So I love that, and I hope like monsters who are tuned in, they will understand, and maybe they're like, they stop their car and they're like, oh my god, you're so right. Like,
I
this is
hope
really,
so too. They're like, oh my God, this girl is like speaking everything I
I am
always thought about. I am attacked.
I am attacked at this moment in EDSA. Ganon. But it's great though, and so like I love the way that you put importance in like why you should be more financially responsible and how to do it as well.